Today is a special episode of Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Normally, we broadcast or we post on Thursdays, but today is a special episode given the COVID-19, the coronavirus. And today, for that, I've got a special guest, Michael Zuber. Michael is a former software sales executive. He's located in Silicon Valley, and he's a real estate investor, and is also the author of One Rental at a Time. He's got a blog and an excellent YouTube channel. I encourage you all to check that out. And in just a minute, we're going to talk with Michael about what he sees with the coronavirus and how he thinks it's going to affect real estate, and some challenges that we all going to face, and possibly some ways we can take advantage of that. And before we bring Michael on, I just want to remind you, if you like what we're doing here, you can always like, share, and subscribe, and would love to hear any comments you have. And you can find us on YouTube as well at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. With that, I want to welcome Michael. Michael, welcome to this special edition of CREPN Radio.
Darren, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm ecstatic to get the opportunity to talk about something in a special edition. You know, this stuff is happening in real time, and people, have choices to make, short-term and long-term. So, when folks, have the opportunity to share 20 years of experience, I think we should. So I was very happy to accept this invitation and look forward to the discussion.
Well, before we jump into it, if you could just take a few seconds and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I guess my journey in real estate investing really starts on my 30th birthday. Before that, I was a traveling software salesperson, had a quota, that hung around my neck every 90 days. Was by all accounts successful, but I knew I couldn't do that forever, right? It's kind of a young man or young woman's game. It wears on you, this 90-day in, out, you could be fired at any moment. And I didn't want to do it. At that time, if you rewind the clock, it was early 2000s. I had just lost six figures in the stock market. And I'm like, you know what? That was terrible. I'm not going to do that again. So what could I do? So I went to a physical bookstore. Yes, they had them at the time. And I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it fundamentally changed my life, right? It was the mindset shift for me. It introduced a concept that nobody in my entire family ever had, which was rental properties. I remember the conversation about her condo in Portland and his condo in Honolulu. And I'm like, ooh, I can get some of that. And the story goes on, ups and downs, but over a course of 15 years while working full time, I built up a portfolio 2.5 hours away in Fresno, California, that allowed my wife to retire. 5 years ago, I retired 2 years ago. And, you got to realize that was through the peak of the '08, throughout the crash when banks told us to go away, and ultimately the return. So I have seen lots and lots of things. You talk about the YouTube channel, One Rental at a Time. I do daily content because I look for two things: cost of capital and what's going on with the consumer. And it's because I've been doing that for 20 years. I think I have at least a somewhat decent handle on what's happening at the consumer level, and how the consumer goes is how, residential real estate often goes. So, you can sort of see the chessboard moving around, and when you see it, it also opens up opportunities. So that'll be fun to talk about.
No, and again, I want to stress that anybody that's curious or dinking around on YouTube or looking for some valuable content on real estate, I highly encourage you to check out Michael's channel, One Rental at a Time, because it's in my opinion, it's must see YouTube. So I'm a subscriber there. So let's I guess kind of just, I don't really know exactly how to do this, but we'll just kind of jump into it.
Okay.
I think the setting prior to, say, last week was that this seemed like it maybe was some faraway thing. It was remote. It might have some sort of effect, but nobody saw it as being. And I can't say nobody, but I'm certainly of the mind, and just what I remember seeing, and some people, oh, it's just the flu, come on, this is just the flu kind of thing. And here we sit, March 16th, and clearly it's a little bit different than the flu.
Sure.
We've got travel restrictions, gathering size restrictions, schools are out. Um, I think uh, I read something here in Oregon. I don't know if it's happened just yet, but there's been talk about shutting down restaurants and bars. And I think even like in Ohio, I think I saw that that's the case. So clearly, this is not just a one industry thing. This is the whole left to right, top to bottom economy is being affected by this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so with that being kind of the the the, the landscape that we're looking at, um, how how do you think in terms of this as far as where we were, where we are, where this is going?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, the thing that you know, I guess the thing that I'm either known for or my wife thinks I'm crazy is I kind of focus on what I can focus on. And for this conversation and much of my investing career, it's really been about the consumer because the consumer drives the American economy, right? Depending on which thing you read, it's 66 to 70% of the economy, right? With the rest of the 30% being business and government spending, right? So if you can figure out where the masses are going, as they're heading that direction, you can make some strategic bets. And if you get really good, you can start to imagine inflection points. So, I mean, let's just document three inflection points that, nobody can question. And, I have successfully profited from. So I start my investing career, as we talked about, early 2000s. I buy 8 houses, the whole run up in my market. Right around 2007 or eight, I can't buy the ninth house. And I realize they're overpriced. Everybody's telling me I'm wrong, but my fancy spreadsheet says it doesn't work. So we do some 1031 exchanges. We get rid of all of our houses. We go from 8 to 80 units because, believe it or not, multifamily was cheap at that point. And the reason I bring that up is because that's the first inflection point. Everybody thought I was wrong. I was going to real estate meetups and people were telling me about these teaser loans and 2 and 28s, and my mathematical brain just wouldn't work. So we just numbers, right? The first house we bought for 107, we sold at 263 or 264. The person who bought it was lucky because it went all the way up to 300. So yes, you can say I sold early, but I sold safely. That person ultimately lost the house and it retrades at 75. This is
Wow.
not secret. You can look it up at 1818 North Stripe East 93703. It's in Zillow. You can see all this stuff in black and white. And oh, by the way, that house that retraded at 75 just recently retraded at 178. So 13 years later, it's 90 grand less than what we sold it for. So yes, I sold it early, but I sold it well. But most importantly, we moved a house that was renting for 1100 into a multifamily building that we still own today that rented for 3 grand at the time and now is closer to 5 grand. Um, so that's the first time. Second time, 2010, 11, which was out the best time to buy real estate as an investment. Properties in my market were selling for land value. The problem is nobody was lending, right? We went to a bank. We went to two large financial institutions with 800 credit scores, 6-figure incomes, 7-figure net worths, and they told us no. So we could have done two things. We could have sat on our hands. We could have saved, and bought a few for cash. But no, we knew stuff was on sale. So we went and got hard money first, which is really, really expensive, like 12%, 3 points expensive. And then we went to private money and we started paying 10% to our friends and family. And that worked. And we kept going over and over and over and over again. We bought as much as we could. Then the market rebounds. And just recently, I started telling people that multifamily is overpriced. I mean, overpriced and overpriced. And people are telling me I'm an idiot and cap rates are going down and interest rates are going down. Well, I sold 3 of our apartment buildings in the last 9 months, significantly raised our capital because I knew something was coming. And, I am really glad now that, I'm focused on residential real estate because that is by far going to be where the opportunities lie short term, and multifamily is going to blow up in the next 2 or 3 years. So I bring this conversation and those 3 stories to say that my opinion might matter a little more than some, because I got three, the last three pivots I got right. So it's going to be interesting to talk about.
So you introduced the consumer as kind of the canary in the coal mine that you watch, but
Mhm,
as you transition from single family to multifamily back to single family, what
mhm.
was it more of was that a consumer event, or was it more just a price metrics spreadsheet
Well, it
kind of
was
account?
consumer. No, well, the spreadsheets always are my, I check the math, right? Because that tells me when I'm selling early or late. But when I go to the reason I still speak at real estate meetups and I want to go talk in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people, is because I want to hear the questions. And I use those questions to tell me what's hot. And over the last year, out of nowhere, everybody was a brand new syndicator. Everybody was talking about multifamily. Everybody was spinning the song that multifamily and C class property does well in a recession. And I'm like, what are you freaking talking about? I got tax returns that prove that different. Um, so again, when everybody goes one direction, that is the consumer. When they think they can't miss, oh, the time is right for a crash. And we are about to watch and witness a real estate crash in multifamily. I mean, Carl Icahn is out there shorting commercial bonds. Now that happens to be more office space and retail, but it's not far behind to think that there are going to be many, many, many skinny apartment deals blow up and go back to banks here in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you kind of sharing that, because I think that again, it's really easy to follow the herd, be the last one to the party, thinking that there's
Mhm.
still, still a few chairs left, or the music isn't going to stop, kind of thing, and only to find out that you're the last one, and everybody's got a chair, and the music stopped, and it's not any fun. Um,
Mhm.
what in looking through this, um, how do you see, I guess, the next play on this? Because
Mhm.
what I see is, in fact, I got my first call yesterday. One of my tenants, they work for a school district, and schools are out of session right now, and
Mhm.
so consequently, they're not going to get paid. And
Mhm.
they were giving me the heads up that, hey, April's rent is going to be a challenge. And
Yep.
as we just kind of introduced all of these different uh, closures,
Mhm.
airlines, restaurants, bars, schools, on and on and on. Nobody's getting paid, and these people are living hand to
Mhm.
mouth to begin with. How does this unfold?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you two answers. I'm going to give you the worst case scenario answer, and then I'm going to give you the one that I think happens. So worst case scenario answer is, and let's be clear, right? It may sound like I sold all my apartments. I didn't. We 2/3 of our portfolio is still multifamily. So believe me when I say I'm right there with you. I'm suffering the same thing, and I expect the same phone calls. Um, we're gonna have to work with people. They should. We're gonna have to be sensitive to what's going on. This I just heard. I mean, before this call started, I was watching President Trump talk about this thing possibly going to July or August, which frightened me to no end. Um, I'm hoping somebody clarifies that because that was a crazy statement. But we're going to have to be sensitive. And I think there's a couple of realities in the worst case scenario. I fully expect every state, if not federally, to outlaw evictions um, pretty soon. And it's probably going to be 60 or 90 days. And I'm sure they will revisit this if it goes longer. Um, if these are tenants that we want to keep long term, do we really think schools will be out forever? No. I mean, schools will eventually be back, airlines will eventually be going, but it's going to be rough for people that live hand to mouth. Um, but let's talk about reality now. People will riot in the streets if the federal government doesn't get out of their freaking way and pass legislation this week that pays teachers and stewardesses and airline pilots and manufacturers and restaurant workers and for being out of work because of this virus that no one saw coming. It is going to happen. I've been doing this 20 years, and I remember them sending out checks to people before. I remember $8,000 credits for first-time home buyers. The federal government needs to get out of their flipping way and help the American public. I have every confidence they will, or they will. It is either they do it themselves or we riot and then they eventually do. So I fully expect your teachers, my tenants, to eventually have a check show up. It will show up in the middle of April. So we're going to have to give them some time. I would waive all late penalties. Let's be good human beings. Let's not take advantage of people that this happened to. Let's make sure they pay rent. This is no free lunch. We're not in that world. Um, but let's communicate. And if you happen to be in an environment where maybe the entire building is full of teachers for whatever reason, you need to communicate with your bank. Let's realize that bad news does not get better with age. Hope and prayer is interesting to do, but not a strategy with financial numbers. But I think if we're good citizens, we realize that the federal government will eventually get their ass in gear, and we'll be okay. It won't be perfect. The economy in Q2, I'm calling for a 10% drop in GDP, which is unheard of. It's going to happen. We're being told to stay inside, which, oh, by the way, is a good thing for a landlord, right? Because what happens? Water is needed first, food is needed second, shelter is needed third. All this extra stuff that people have been doing, going out to eat and coffees and Gucci bags and all this nonsense that we do in our consumer economy, the wants are going to go away. Rent is going to get paid because they don't want to live in their cars. So am I nervous? I'm not really even nervous owning, lots of units. I know it's going to be choppy. I don't expect April collection to be the same as March. I had a 99.1% collection in March in my market. I had a couple of partial balances that stretched in the first couple of weeks. I don't expect that in April. I expect April to be choppy. I expect May to be choppy. I'm hoping by June, this, Family First Leave Act and all this other funds start coming in because people will pay to stay. They're going to have to stay somewhere. They can't, they're not going to be buying Gucci bags on other things. So I'm concerned, but not nervous, being a multifamily landlord.
I appreciate that because I think too that it appears as though the government is, or the wheels are turning. It sounds like it's in the Senate's lap now to Mitch McConnell and the Senate to get something passed. But I would be shocked if that doesn't come through this week. And again, I think it's got to happen even to support the markets.
Yeah.
You can't let this linger and let the markets continue to wonder if anything's going to happen. I was thinking about that even. At the end of the day, when the stock market is getting pummeled and people's 401ks are getting pummeled, and not just your individual accounts, but the government's expecting to collect tax on that. That just their receivables just went. I mean,
Mm.
so that's a ripple effect I hadn't really thought of till just this morning.
Yeah.
That how that plays out. Um,
Yep.
so, and I think that makes sense. I would think that if it happens this week, do you feel like that's the markets will settle if the
When
news
you
comes
say
up?
when you s- yeah, when you say markets, I assume you're talking about the stock market.
Well, stock market, just from a standpoint of just the bloodletting, at least from a standpoint
Mm.
of, or do you feel like the
I think no more
Q2
pain
is
ahead.
gonna?
Q2 is going to be what we haven't had a great deal of, and what I'm waiting for is pre-announcements. As you mentioned in the opening, I was a 20-year software sales professional, and my network is predominantly dominated with software sales professionals, and they're all telling me that no meetings are happening, their pipeline's a joke, and they're just keeping it full so they can keep their job, and it's going to be bad. Tech needs to drop until tech takes a 15 or 20% haircut, because this is frankly a combination of the dot-com crash and 9/11. And the great financial collapse. It's a mishmash of all of those things, having been investing through all of those. It's like 9/11 in that it came out of nowhere and it was unexpected except by a few people. It could be fast and pervasive, and keep going on much longer than most people thought, like the financial crisis. So no, I think we could see Dow 15,000 before we see Dow 27,000. I think there's quite a bit more pain ahead. I won't even look at stocks until they're 50% off their highs. And I think we're at 27 or 28 as of the start of this recording. So no, I mean, they're still too expensive for me.
Well, maybe not that we've reached the bottom, but I'm just kind of curious if you feel like good news from Washington, at least that there is some sort of a plan, would at least curtail some of the
Mhm.
dropping, the immediate dropping. Do you think it'd
Yeah.
give some
Yeah, I
stability?
talk in I talk in wins and losses, and we have been in a series of losses for several weeks now. We're meaning by loss, meaning bad news, something negative, something a surprise. You know, Friday was the first attempt by our federal government when the House passed the Families First Act. The fact that it's sitting in the Senate still on a Monday afternoon is almost criminal, and the fact that they didn't meet over the weekend is absolutely criminal. The fact that the Fed was willing to work over the weekend and do what they did on Sunday, again, it's a W. But you know, it's like spitting in the wind right now. We need the federal government to step up. They've been woefully behind and woefully inadequate and woefully just woeful. But yeah, if they come through with something, it'll be a positive. But let's be clear. This is the first act, law, band-aid, whatever you want to call it, of probably 15 or 20 of them. So to think that this one is going to be the cure-all, you're not paying attention. They've got to do something for the airlines and the cruise industry, and they're going to definitely have to get this system going of checks to restaurants. And they're going to tell us to all stay inside for weeks, and you know that's going to come with a cost. And if they don't want to have riots in the streets, then you know they're going to have to pay people so they have food, water, and shelter. The sooner they realize that and stop playing the fact they're playing politics today is it's insulting and very sad.
Yeah, I would definitely say sad on a time of crisis that you would continue to play the politics. It is unfortunate. Um,
Mhm.
so okay, so we've gone from where we were. We've talked a little bit about where things are today.
Mhm.
How do you see this shaking out as far as opportunities?
That is the one. I mean, that's the real question that matters, right? Looking at history and where we are is kind of like, okay, sunk cost. It is what it is. But how to take advantage of this, and that's where again I think the consumer comes in. So let's just talk about the consumers. You know, starting tonight. So the future, right? And let's talk about it in just the real estate lens. When we can, there's so many avenues we can go down, but let's just have a rash discussion, Darren. If you were looking to buy a brand new home today, not brand new as in new construction, but your next purchase, do you think you'd be running out today to sign up for a six-figure mortgage? Um, you know, today, would you really be excited to do that today?
Not me.
No,
No.
not me, and not me either. And I would argue that 99.99999% of the rational human beings out there aren't going to be willing to do that. So we are already seeing escrows blow up. I have contact with lots of different escrow agents, given my background in number of transactions I do, and they're telling me every day, oh, three blew up today, five blew up today, six blew up today, and these are buyers losing earnest money deposit, right? They were down to the wire. So I would expect escrows to blow up. Again, speaking in real time. If you're in escrow as a seller, good luck. Hold on, because the owner occupant buyer is scared. The second thing that's going to happen, let's say you were looking to sell and you had a nice house, medium for the market. Do you think you'd really be excited when an agent said, you know what, we're going to hold an open house Saturday and Sunday and invite dozens of your neighbors to come touch your stuff? The answer is probably no, right? So you can expect listings to go down. Listings are going to go down, which really hurts because we're already at remarkably low levels of listing, but it's going to happen. Listings are going to go down. Okay, so what does that leave? Well, unfortunately, life events still happen. Death, divorce, job transfers. You do have moments in time where you have to sell regardless. And that is what we in the industry call a motivated seller. So, what is going to happen come May, maybe late April, but certainly by May, is guys like me who bought in 2010 when all of you were freaking out and scared, is I'm going to go talk to every motivated seller that's there because it will be clear as day who is motivated, and I'm going to write them a ridiculously low offer. I'm going to write a ridiculously low offer for cash, or I'm going to write one that's close to asking but with terms. And I'm going to hope the term one wins because when I buy on terms, I can come in for micro money and control an asset that I know is going to be valuable next year when all this stuff blows over, and I can artificially gain a huge advantage because I will strike and have confidence to do so because I learned my market. I know when stuff goes on sale, and I have the ability to hold. I'm a buy and hold person, so I will hold however long it takes, and I can cash flow stuff as rentals. And I'm not nervous about my tenants not paying because I know it goes water, food, shelter. And I'm going to take a huge advantage of what's coming this year.
No, that the way you laid it out there, it's definitely easy to see that. I I know in my neighborhood there's a property that's been for sale for a long time, and finally last week I saw a sale pending, and then all this is happening. I'm going like, hope they make it to the finish
Yeah.
line. When you were mentioning the calls to escrow agents about how many are blowing up, any sense of how many are being completed? I mean, is it a 100% blow up, or is it?
No, there's still, well, again, we got to be careful when you talk to escrow agents because a lot of their business is refinance activities, and
All right.
all of that stuff is getting done, right? So you got to be very careful. I haven't asked that question, but again, I know these folks well enough. I still think it's the exception. I'd be shocked if 30% of the ones are blowing up. But again, you got to realize we were having 0 blowups 2 weeks ago, right? So
Right.
it's the trend that is interesting to me, right? Any single data point is useless to me. It's the daily, because again, I've been watching my market now for almost 20 years. So I can see when there's a trend forming. And the fact that we went from 0% blowups to even 20 or 25% is meaningful because that just means that there's a seller on the other side that is a little bit more motivated than they were when their house went into escrow. And that's just more data for me to kind of internalize and look to take advantage of.
Uh, the multifamily market comparative or comparing to a single family, how do you see
Mhm.
that projecting?
Sure. Just so we're clear, when we say multifamily, I assume it's commercial, so 5 and above.
Five plus.
5 and above. So I would say at this point, multifamily is still, in my opinion, overinflated in most markets. I'm sure there's a market out there where it's not true. I haven't found it, but I'm not really looking. I only look at mine. It's still inflated. The problem here is, I mean, this is what's going to happen. There are so many people that have been buying multifamily because Grant Cardone said bigger is better, right? Grant Cardone single-handedly made all these millennials and folks look at apartments because bigger is better and you should never buy a house. I mean, he said that for years. Oh, by the way, he's changing his tune now, but that's what he said for years. So people did it. And now they're going to go through their first recession. I have owned apartment buildings in a recession. I know the difference between economic occupancy and occupancy, heartbeats and paychecks or rent checks. They're different. Turns kill landlords. C-class apartment buildings don't do better in a recession. Whoever told you that was lying or an idiot. You can pick the answer. I don't care. They just didn't do it. So multifamily is going to be in trouble. Depending on how your debt is put together and when it comes up, you're I believe most landlords are going to have to carry negative cash flow properties for the next 4 or 5 months. It's going to be hard to cash flow if you got a bunch of debt on it. I don't necessarily think it doesn't last a year, but you may have to do a capital call if your debt structure is put that, if you have investors. I have no investors, I have no partners, so it's my stuff. If you have one asset that's performing and another one isn't, you have partners. Well, unfortunately, you can't put cash together, right? That's a no-no. So there are going to be some operators and syndicators that got to go do a capital call at absolutely the wrong time. And that's going to cause some forced sales or some uncomfortable conversations. So again, I don't think this goes on long enough to really, really, really damage multifamily, but it is going to show these people that are going out on social media and talking about multifamily being the easiest thing to do and just give me 50 or 100 grand and I'll give you 6% or 8% preferred return. That preferred return's gone. They better be conserving capital. If you're still getting your preferred return today, your operator is not doing good business. Just not. It's just not. They need to be conserving today.
No, your conserve message. I know you have Jonathan Twombly on as a regular guest, and I caught your guys' episode last week, and I got the message. I had a
Good.
I had a roof scheduled for one of my properties, and I'm listening to this. I'm going, whoa, wait a minute, wait a minute. And literally because I'd watched your episode there. I sent an email to the property manager. I said, whoa, put a stop on that. Called him the next morning, make sure he got the message.
Yeah.
And because it was just in that moment that I realized that, wait a minute, I might need that cash, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, if you're a multifamily owner today, your number one job is to conserve capital. I had roughly $100,000 in planned out expenditures this year. All of it's on hold, all of it, because I expect to lose $10,000 to $15,000. I shouldn't say lose. I plan to have $10,000 to $15,000 a month in rent delayed. Right. I think I'll get most of it eventually when all this federal government gets out of their own way. Um, but that's real money, right? So all of my capital expenditures are on hold. We will be patching instead of replacing for the next 3 or 4 months without question. We're not going to repave a parking lot that can wait another 6 months. So yes, conserve, conserve, conserve.
yeah. And hey, on the multifamily, you mentioned kind of this lingering effect. Um, do you have any sense that it will end up in um, some forced sales, or do you think it'll be more uncomfortable
Absolutely.
calls with?
I think forced sales happen. I mean, again, I'm such an open book. Here is my playbook. I believe right now the opportunity in the market to buy assets is single family or residential. Right? In my spreadsheet, it's the best return. But I'm just repeating what I wrote in our book from 2003 to 2008. I'm buying all the single family houses I can because I want a 1031 exchange when these assets increase in values and owner occupants are once again greedy. And I'll take all that extra equity and I will move it into apartment buildings that blew up. There will be lots and lots and lots of multifamily that crumbles, cracks, is distressed in 3 to 5 years. So instead of just building cash, I'm going to take my cash, buy well-priced single-family assets that I can hold through a recession. Because when it turns, I will 1031 my equity into multifamily that cracked. I mean, I did it before; it worked beautifully, and I will just simply do it again.
Uh, well, it seems like the one thing that you have that kind of a Warren Buffett kind of a sense of things is to turn when others can no, it's a little further, we can go a little bit further, kind of thing,
I,
and zig
yeah,
when
I don't
others are
mind being
zagging.
early. I don't want to be late. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely. I've bought at the high and the low, and I mean, I'm buying at the low is a much better strategy than buying at the high, expecting it to go up, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
well, that's great. So, any other thoughts on Corona and real estate and how it
Yeah.
for today?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, not a doctor, none of these, all the normal caveats you get from a real estate guy. I think it's pretty clear our focus is to flatten the curve, as they say. So stay home, social distancing. And the real heroes in the next 2 months are going to be our healthcare workers, the people truly on the front lines trying to save lives. We are unfortunately going to lose more people than we should. Um, that's never a good thing as a human being to think that. But let's support our health workers. If you happen to be in a situation where you could watch somebody's kids or do anything to help those health workers go out on the front lines and risk their lives to save others, we should support that. I'm personally thinking about the kids in my area who used to get their daily meals from schools. So I'm actively out there trying to figure out a way to make sure they can get and be fed. Um, because again, we can't have the next generation sacrifice because of a bug that none of us could see. So that's something I'm thinking about. As far as landlord goes, being a multifamily, be a good person. Um, you are part of the ownership class, whether you like it or not. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, it's going to suck. If it really hurts bad, call your lender. Something that's been proven in the '08 crash is if you talk to your lender, they're going to be in a situation to potentially work something out. So go have those conversations early. I certainly hope they don't happen right away because hopefully you have some reserves, but realize if this goes on a long time that just be an adult, go have the conversation. I promise you, your banks don't want it. I bought a bunch of multifamilies. I bought over 50 units in 2010, 11 that were apartments from people that just walked away. And the banks just gave me the keys. All I had to do was put like 20 or 30 grand in a bank for a reserve or escrow. Um, don't do that. Talk to your bank early and often. This will pass. The American economy is amazing. We will be back better and stronger. Unfortunately, we have more pain ahead. But if you're ready, if you're calm, you can do some great things this year. I suggest you learn your market. Go make some single family investments because that's where all the pain is going to be as owner occupants disappear. So let's be safe and have some fun.
Got it. And Michael, once again, before we wrap this up, where can the listeners go to find you and or learn more?
Thank you, Darren. Again, I do all my original content is on my YouTube channel called One Rental at a Time. I produce daily content, 2 or 3 videos a day. If you want to read about my story and realize what it takes to go from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to financial freedom, go to Amazon or Audible. It is a book on Audible now. It's called One Rental at a Time. It is just behind my shoulder. So daily content on YouTube, and you want to know my story, go buy the book.
All right. Michael, I can't say thanks enough. I have enjoyed it immensely and hope we can do it again soon.
Anytime you want, Darren. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
All right. And for the listeners, if you like this, again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That's all we've got for today. And hopefully we'll have something tomorrow on this COVID-19 and real estate reflection. Talk to you later.